Hi, y'all. Welcome back to Samantha's Beauty Confessions. Today, I'm doing a solo episode, and full transparency, I had no idea what I was going to talk about today. It's just kind of been one of those weeks where I haven't really felt motivated, inspired. My creative juices weren't flowing, and it was hard for me to come up with a topic. So I did the only thing I know how to do in this situation, and I used a phone a friend lifeline. And one of the topics that was suggested to me was to talk about how I was able to run a successful business while my personal life was falling apart. And this person was referring to my divorce. So, for anyone who doesn't know, I went through a divorce in 2019. And to any of you that are listening who've also been through that, you know how absolutely devastating this time in your life can be. It's hard to explain. It's something you actually have to experience to understand. And as a matter of fact, I can still remember whenever I sat down with my mom and my stepdad to tell them about my decision to file, my stepdad looked at me and told me that this was going to be the hardest time in my life. And I was so naive back then. I just kind of looked at him and thought, why? Like, I've thought about this. This is my decision. This is what I want. So, how hard could it be? But now that I'm almost 5 years removed from that, I can 100% say that he was exactly right. It was the hardest thing that I've ever experienced, and I wouldn't wish that upon anyone. Ironically, though, during this time was also when my career was starting to take off. I think I've mentioned it before, but I literally took my very first brand call in the hospital parking lot while my ex-husband was laying in an ICU bed, which is crazy, right? And I've reflected back on this time many different times over the years and just tried to understand or think about, I guess, how I was able to do all of that, how I was able to pull myself together and be on, so to speak, when all I felt like doing was giving up. And the answer that I always come back to is that I think I was just desperately searching for some kind of normal, a routine, something consistent, and really something that I had somewhat control over, I guess, at a time where I felt like my life was so out of my control. I had no clear vision of what my future looked like. It was just crazy. So I was kind of grasping at straws there. And for me, this thing became my work and I poured myself into it. And at the time, I didn't see anything wrong with it. In fact, I thought it was a good thing that it was giving me something to look forward to during a really, really dark time. But now that I'm 5 years removed from the situation, I can't help but wonder if me doing what I did wasn't just a way for me to put a band aid on a really, really big wound. And that's what I want to get into today. Welcome to Samantha's Beauty Confessions, where we engage in authentic conversations and confess everything it takes to turn our dreams into a reality. Together, we'll unlock your unique beauty and guide you toward living the life of your dreams. Get ready to go beyond the highlight reel, embrace the journey, and grow together, one conversation at a time. So let's go back to 2019 for a second. My divorce was finalized on Halloween of that year. And just a couple of weeks later, I had a trip planned to go to Los Angeles, where I was working with a color company on a new color line they were launching. And I didn't really realize this at the time, but on these trips, these companies are kind of scouting you out, so to speak, and they're seeing if maybe you're a good fit for a longer term partnership or campaign or whatever you want to call it. And thankfully, I didn't realize that then because I think it would have went even worse than it probably did. Anyways, I went, I did what I needed to do because again, I had this goal for myself. And I want you to really stop and think about that for a second because now that I'm removed from the situation, it really does blow my mind that I was able to do this because at this time I was just a few weeks out of the craziest time in my life and I was this broken down, confused, fearful, insecure human just trying to survive in the world. I had absolutely no business being in LA that weekend, but I was. Because one thing about me is that I'm very determined. And anytime that I set a goal for myself, I will quite literally do whatever it takes to get there. It's just how I've been my entire life. And I'm not saying that as a good thing necessarily because I think that this gets me into a lot of trouble, but I just want to throw that out there that I am very determined. And I really do believe that this like character trait of mine is how I was able to push through. During this time, I was taking all of the emotions that came with my divorce and applying them into my work, pouring them back into my business. Like, for example, if I was sitting at home and I started feeling sad, I would call up a client or text a client and ask them if they'd meet me at the salon to shampoo and style their hair and just film a bunch of content, distract myself, if you will. Or if I was feeling stressed out or angry or anything like that, I would create content or edit a video or go up to the salon and reorganize my color cabinet. Basically, I was doing anything to avoid feeling. And at this time in my life, there were people who were checking in on me, I guess you'd say, who were asking me like, are you taking time for yourself? Are you going to therapy? Are you sure you're okay? Blah blah blah. We just see you working all the time. And anytime someone would say this, I would justify it by explaining to them that everything I was doing was getting me closer to my goal. I was working. I was doing what I had to do. And I really was working, but I don't know that I needed to be working that much. Aside from being determined, I'm also very competitive. And this is something that I didn't realize until pretty recently, I would say. I always thought of someone who was competitive as having to do with like other people in sports. Like if they were out playing putt-putt or card games or bowling with a group of friends, they would want to win in that group. And I didn't ever relate to that. But what I've realized recently is that there are two kinds of competitive people. There's the kind that I just explained, and then there's the kind that competes only with themselves. And that is what I am. And at this time, I was constantly setting goals for myself, like with my followers or my engagement, or how many times a day I was posting, or how many views my videos got, how many likes my photos got, stuff like that. And each day, it was like I was competing with myself from the day before, just trying to do more and make it better and disappearing, so to speak, into the digital space, into my phone. And again, anytime someone would bring that to my attention and say like, hey, why don't you put your phone up and try to be present? I would almost like get defensive, I guess. And I would tell them, look, I'm working toward my goal. This is temporary, something like that. And again, I really believed that. I was working. It just so happened that my job was never ending. And now that I'm looking back on that time, what I realize is that while I thought I was running my business to make it more successful, what I was actually doing was running from my emotions and from my feelings. And so whenever this episode topic was suggested to me, I was really hesitant to talk about it at first. And as a matter of fact, I looked at John and said, I think that you're going to have to help me record this because I don't remember how I ran my business during that time. Like, I don't think I did. But then I started thinking about it more and I thought, actually, this is a perfect episode to do today because this is something that I need to bring attention to. This is a topic that I feel needs to be addressed because from the outside looking in during this time, I'm sure it did look like I was running a successful business. I was taking clients, I was teaching classes, I was going to events, I was speaking on stages. I mean, shit, I was doing everything. But I didn't ever share the things that were going on behind the scenes. I didn't talk about the times when I would log onto my computer for a Zoom call and I would have red eyes and tear-stained cheeks. And I didn't talk about the times where I would have to plaster a smile on my face when my clients walked through the door because I had been in the bathroom just seconds before having a panic attack. And I didn't talk about the days where I would be driving home from work and I'd have to pull my car over because I passed something or I heard a song or something happened that triggered me. I didn't share any of that because that's not what I thought the internet wanted to see. But in reality, my life was a mess. And it was a mess for quite a while. I always say that I lived in that shell mode for close to 2 years. And I can vividly remember like going to these events and doing these things with all of these people and almost having like this out of body experience where I could hear everything that was going on around me. I could see everything that was happening, but in my mind, it all seemed so echoey, which is a really weird thing to try to explain, but that's the best way I know how to say it. My physical body was there, but my mind wasn't. And whenever I think about that time, it honestly makes me sad because these things that I'm talking about, that I'm referring to, were some of the coolest things that have ever happened to me in my career. They're moments that I should remember and have these happy, amazing memories of, but I don't. In fact, I barely remember them at all. And what's even crazier is that none of them were mandatory. I didn't have to go to any of this stuff. I didn't have to do any of these things. But again, circling back to my determination, I just thought it's what I had to do in order to be successful. And I wanted that so badly. The next thing I'm going to try to explain is going to be a little bit hard for me to do, but y'all just bear with me here. But after about 2 years of living like this, I finally had this moment where I woke up. Like, I started realizing that I was just living as this shell of a human, And when I did, the best way I know how to explain it is that I feel like I was caught in this massive tornado. This tornado that had already been going for so long, and it had picked up all of this debris, and it was just spinning and spinning and spinning so freaking fast that I couldn't quite see the way down. And so I did the only thing I know how to do, and I tried to ride it out. And in August of 2022, that is when the tornado, so to speak, finally stopped. I've mentioned this before, but winning my one-shot award was a very pivotal moment for me in so many ways. And it was the turning point in this so-called tornado that I'm speaking of. And I can remember when I came down from the high and the excitement of that evening, when I laid my head down on my pillow to go to sleep, I remember thinking to myself, like, whoa, how in the hell did I get here? And that's a really weird thing to feel when you're supposed to feel all these other happy emotions. When, the goal that you had set for yourself all those years ago, you finally achieve it. And yet you don't feel any of the things that you thought you would or you thought you should feel after that happens. And for the next several months, I just kind of lived in this space of feeling uninspired and confused, and just really trying to put together all of the pieces and figure out where I wanted to go next. And as I was cleaning up from this tornado, that's when I learned so much about myself. I learned that it's okay to say no to events that you don't want to go to. I learned that it's okay to cancel a Zoom call if you're having a bad day. I learned that it's okay to have those days where you do absolutely nothing, or when you take a break from social media because you just can't physically be on anymore. I learned to embrace the parts of my story that I had been embarrassed of for so long. I learned to be more understanding and to admit when I'm wrong. But most of all, I learned that avoiding your emotions will always catch up with you, and that it is so much easier to handle these things in small storms, so to speak, rather than waiting on it to become a full-blown tornado. I want to end today's episode by reminding you that not everything you see on social media is real, and that sometimes the people that you look up to the most, the people that you think are the most successful, could actually be dealing with a really big storm behind the scenes. And so if you're listening right now and you're dealing with a storm of your own, I hope this episode has shown you that you're not alone, and that there are so many people out there who are willing and able to help you if you just open up and allow them to do so. Thank you all for listening, and I'll talk to you again next Monday. Okay, y'all, that's it for today's episode. Be sure to follow the show on whatever platform you're listening, and leave a rating and review to show your support so we can continue growing together. If today's episode really resonated with you, you can always share it to your story, and be sure to tag me so I can personally thank you. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I'll talk to you again next week.